story, it's a parable, because it parallels our lives in so many ways. We don't surrender because we feel like if I let go, everything's going to fall apart. If I let go, it will be horrible situation. I will die. Everything will fail. I've got to hold on. I've got to hold on for dear life. So the mind may say, oh yeah, surrender is a good thing. But the rest of us, the will, the other part of the mind, the ego, absolutely doesn't want to surrender. It's terrified. If I surrender to fir kya hoga, what's going to happen to me? If I don't look out for myself, who's going to look out for me? How can I possibly surrender to God's will? For mere ko kya hoga? Who's gonna take care of me? And this is really where surrender reminds us over and over again. Let God drive your chariot. Let God run the show. Because we think that we have to hold on, because we think everything will fall apart if we don't. But like that man who spent his whole life unnecessarily. I mean, imagine if all 10 of your fingers are spent holding on to a rope. You can't do anything else. If all of your mind is spent worried, oh my God, I'm going to fall. Hands are also gone, mind is also gone. Life is useless. But you're on solid ground the whole time. There's nowhere to fall. But I think a lot of us have this terror inside. Surrender somehow means this falling into a void. This terror-filled, oh my God, what will happen? And the Bhagavad Gita is such a perfect teaching for what I call the trust fall into the universe. You know, if you've ever on a school field trip or a corporate, team building retreat or something, they do these things called trust falls where you have a partner, right? And one person has their back to the other one and they hold their arms out like this and they just fall. And the person behind them has their arms like this to catch the person when they fall. And although I've never worked in any kind of corporation, so I've never been on one of those team building retreats, we did this a lot in school. Lots of different school field trips and programs and all sorts of activities were all around trust falls. And what's so interesting is sometimes you're paired up with someone, you don't even know them. It's a stranger. Sometimes you're paired up with someone you hate and you know they hate you. But you always fall back anyway. In all those times I've done it, I've never seen anyone say, I refuse. This guy's going to drop me. I know he's going to. I'm not going to fall. I've never seen anyone refuse. And I've never seen anyone get dropped. Whether the person behind them is the worst schoolyard bully, the meanest person in the class, or a random stranger. Everyone catches the person who falls. And it's so interesting because you think, well, if we can trust our enemy, if we can trust a stranger, why can't we trust God? And that's all that God's asking. There's that beautiful shloka that I share with some relative frequency in here that says, Yat karoshi yadashnasi Yaj Jahoshi Dadasya, Yat Tapasyasi Konteya, Tat Kurushva Madarpana. And it means just offer everything to me. Surrender it all. Everything you do. Even your sadhana. Even the stuff you're proud of. Even the stuff that you think is getting you punya, like your plus points. Give those to me also. Every single thing, surrender it to me. Just put your steering wheel in my hands. Just be a tool in my hands. And it's such a beautiful teaching. And although we're celebrating Gita Jayanti, as I look around and see people from so many different cultures, it's very similar to the beautiful teaching, the beautiful prayer of Saint Francis of Assisi, who says, "O Lord, make me an instrument. Make me an instrument of thy mercy, of thy grace." An instrument, a tool, just in your hands. Let me be that nimitta, that instrument in your hands. So if you think you want to surrender but you can't, ask yourself, what is it that you think you're holding on to? What is it that you think you are holding up? It's like the joke that Puja Swamiji always tells about the lizards. If you've stayed in India long enough, inevitably you've seen a little gecko on the wall or the ceiling of your room. They're completely harmless. But he always tells this joke of the geckos on the ceiling, thinking that they're holding the ceiling up. That somehow they think that they're the ones keeping the ceiling up. And, we laugh, it's cute. It's a funny way of looking at the, ignorance of a reptile on our ceiling. But we actually make the same mistake. We're just as silly as those geckos. Like, obviously the gecko is not holding up the ceiling. Obviously the gecko can only be there because the ceiling is already in place. But so many of us feel like we're holding so much up. That it's up to us. So with the mere vajah se sab ho raha hai. Because of me, everything is happening. I'm the one doing everything. If I weren't here. And that's what makes surrender so difficult. And this is where we realize everything's in God's hands anyway. I mean, the truth is you're surrendered anyway. Because we don't actually have any control anyway. So it's just a matter of illusion of control, falsehood of control, or truth of accepted surrender. And so it's also a call from falsehood to truth, that same asato ma sadgamaya. Same thing. Let me realize and recognize it's all in your hands anyway. So let me surrender to it. So just allow yourself. It's a perfect day. And whenever you feel yourself like you've got that death grip on life, just hear that beautiful angel's voice in your own mind saying, let go, let go, let go. Stop feeling like the gecko on the roof who's holding up the ceiling. And let yourself go. Other questions? Yes. Can Can you speak a little louder? It's very difficult to hear you. Thanks.
Okay. Could you please tell me what is the difference between a causal body and the soul?
What is the difference between our causal body and the soul? So I try usually in here to avoid going too much just into semantics, too much into just esoteric philosophy. It's much more about kind of how does it apply to us. But we were speaking the other night about the Panch Koshas, the 5 different sheaths of the body. And again, I didn't go into it in too much detail then, but basically we've got the physical body, what's called the Annamaya Kosha, that's made up literally of that which is made up of food. And then we've got what collectively is referred to as the subtle body. It's our energetic body. It's our mental body, our intellectual body. It's also that which is spoken of as man, buddhi, ahankar. When we think about that which travels with the soul after death, it's subtle body. As long as we are on our karmic journey, before we've attained that state of complete moksha, the subtle body stays with the soul. So all of that sadhana that we do, those impressions that we do, that which we call sanskaras. So the actual facts of what you've learned don't stay with you. You've got to come back and learn your mathematics. But the impressions upon the mind, upon the intellect, those stay. That stays with you. That's why our sanskaras, these impressions, the sadhana that we do, that's why it's so important. If it were just in this life, why bother? But it's actually that which stays with us. Because it's impacting not the chemistry and electricity of the physical brain, but it's actually impacting that mental and intellectual sheath, that other body. And then you have what's called the bliss body, Anandamaya Kosha, or the causal body. But the soul is that which is never born, never dies. The soul is neither a cause nor an effect. The Supreme Soul. We talk about Padam Atma. It's neither a cause nor an effect. It's not a body of ours. It is that which is indivisible. We say souls plural, but there's not actually plural souls. It's not here we are a whole bunch of souls in bodies together, as though somehow, there was one big soul and it got chopped up into a whole bunch of little pieces, and one piece is in here and one piece is there, one piece is there. It's not like that. There's actually nothing but soul. Our Jiva Atma, which is the individual soul, as long as it is connected to my subtle body, that is taking birth after birth after birth, until it clears its karmic bank account and actually attains moksha. That's my individual soul. But once I attain moksha, that subtle body disappears. It's no longer there. It's there attached only to this Jivatma. When Jivatma merges back with Paramatma, the subtle body no longer has a role. So the soul is that which is actually beyond all of these, even beyond the causal body. I hesitate into silence because any word you throw at it doesn't work. So it's always a matter of like which ineffective word you throw at it this time. The soul is really something to be simply experienced, and it's why we meditate. It's why we pray. It's why we chant. It's why we do all of our spiritual practices, because if I could figure out the soul by just thinking about it, well, we could just sit here and think about it and have Atma Darshan, have self-realization or God realization. But you cannot actually use the mind to go beyond the mind. You have to actually experience it. And it's why we do all of these different practices, a combination of them. The Gyan Yoga that reminds us you are not body, you are soul. The Bhakti Yoga that in love helps us transcend the body to feel soul. The Karma Yoga, such that every minute, every moment is a way of just enabling this physical body to be an instrument for the divine. So there is no separate self. Such that ultimately when we sit down in a practice of an aspect of Raja Yoga, our meditative practices, we're actually able to draw through all of these bodies. Not just through the physical one, but through all of them. And actually touch that within us. Which again, it being Gita Jayanti, going back to the Gita, as Bhagavan Krishna reminds us, is never born, never dies. Immortal. So that sadhana for Atma Darshan is what we practice. Beautiful.
Does the causal body has any memory?
Let's take that up tomorrow. Let's keep, I just want to keep like one deep philosophical question maximum per night and get as much as we can more into what it means for all of us in our lives. Yeah. Because it's so tempting to just get into philosophy and get into, sometimes people will say, well, what's the difference between this word and that word? And to the extent that we can explain that difference as it matters in your life, then it's of deep meaning. Otherwise, unless you're planning to go out and become a professor of different Sanskrit words, it's still nice to learn, but it's not actually that which brings us to the truth that satsang is actually all about. That's kind of the difference between satsang and a philosophy class or a Vedanta class. Yes?
Our life script is already written before our birth by our karmic account or by God. If it is true, then why we have to do effort in day-to-day life?
Great question. So, our life script is not written. Our life stage set is written. So if you imagine a theater, there's a lot of aspects of a theater. There's a stage, there's the stage decorations, there's the other actors and actresses, and then there's the script. Now, the script is that which keeps the plot moving, right? If you've got a husband and a wife, and one of them says, I want a divorce, and the other one says, I hate you, I'll give you a divorce, and storms out the door. Well, that's one plot. But if one of them says, I want a divorce, and the other one says, but I love you, you can't leave me, and goes and gives them a big hug, different plot. Totally different story. Two different scripts. The actors are just reciting lines. But you know that if you read both of those scripts, you would know that drama is going to be completely different. Now, for our lives, we've got different aspects of karma. We've got long-term karma, short-term, immediate, that which is blossoming in this particular lifetime, that which will blossom in a next lifetime. If you take the sum total of all of your karmic fruit that is blossoming in this lifetime, that is known before you take birth, because your immediate karma isn't known. That's based on what I do. So if I pick up this glass of water and I pour it on me, I'll get wet. Immediate karma. But it's not pre-written that I'm going to pick it up and pour it on myself. I have free will. So whether I have wet clothes in 5 minutes or not is determined by the decision that I make about picking up that glass of water. That's immediate karma. But when we take birth, there is a whole bunch of karma that is now, its fruits are going to bear in this lifetime. That creates the set for your life drama. Where you're born, who your parents are, therefore what sort of opportunities you'll have, what sort of sanskaras you'll have, what personality you're likely to develop, what lessons you're going to learn, what challenges you're going to go through. All of that is absolutely pre-written. But what you do with that is what determines the rest of your life. From the moment that you start making decisions, you start creating your own karmic fruit. So even as a 2-year-old child, if Mom says, eat your peas, and you don't eat your peas, there's going to be a different outcome than if you do eat your peas. Simple thing. Your choice to do what Mom says about eating your peas or eating your spinach or not determines what the next hour of your life is going to look like. Do you get dessert? Do you not get dessert? Does dinner end in tears? Does it not end in tears? Do you, right? We all know how it works with kids in that way. And as we grow, we use our intellect. We use our purity of thought, our buddhi and our shuddhi, to utilize our free will to make the best decisions possible. Based on the decisions we make, our future gets written. Now, some of it is already pre-written. Meaning, I was speaking yesterday about, we were talking, I think, somehow about choosing your destiny in some way. And I was talking about how, for me, at 52 years old, which I am now, at about 5'3", no matter how diligently I work, there's absolutely no way that I can make a new career for myself as a professional basketball player or a professional football player. It's just not going to happen. If I had, at 5 or 7, decided that in my life what I wanted to be was a professional basketball player, well, things would be different on some level. It couldn't change the fact that I was only going to be 5'3". So I would always have challenges in it. It's very likely I never would be able to be a professional basketball player. I've never heard of one that short. But I could certainly have developed a great skill in basketball. I might be a really, really, really good basketball player, even if I wasn't professional. So that's kind of the intersection between that which is pre-written, never changes, with what we put in. So another example, you get a child. When I was still in California, when I was doing my PhD in psychology, I used to volunteer at a center for women who were drug addicts. But I volunteered not with the women, I volunteered with their babies, because as part of the program, if they came in for treatment, they got free childcare. So the women would come in for the day for drug treatment, and in exchange, they would have people look after their kids, and their kids would be fed, and they wouldn't have the headache of taking care of a baby. Now, all of those babies were born drug affected, which meant that none of them had a very good chance of developing good cognitive skills, of developing good motor skills. You have kids who are born with heroin in their system, or cocaine in their system, or kids who were born to alcoholics. And you've created a situation where before they even take their first breath out of the womb, much of their life is pre-written. Because all of the neurological development that needed to take place in the womb got all messed up. So we can do as much as we want for those kids, but they will always have that challenge. Now you imagine one of those kids ends up adopted by a beautiful family with lots of money, totally prepared to put all of that money into the treatment of their child. And that child grows with beautiful sanskaras, and the family is spiritual and dedicated and committed and teaches the child you can do anything. Well, the child is most likely going to be able to overcome a good deal of the challenges they were born with, but not all of them. And so throughout our lives, that which we came in with, that which was pre-written, intersects with all of that we do with our free will. But even all of the free will choices are impacted by what you learned when you were a child. If we were raised in a family that taught us you're stupid, you're worthless, you're lazy, you're never going to be anything, we've got full free will, but chances are we don't use it. Chances are we self-sabotage. Chances are we create this prophecy. We fulfill the prophecy. Or we are just depressed and miserable, or we become an addict, or we become a workaholic to prove that I'm not worthless. And on the other hand, if we come into this world in a family that teaches us who you are is divine. Whatever you do, doesn't matter. Who you are is divine. You are full, you are whole, you are complete, you are divine. Again, that same free will gets used with so much more clarity and courage. So there are lots of intersecting threads. But our sadhana that you asked about, our sadhana is that which enables us to make the very best use of our free will. So that whatever our background may be, whatever we came from, we can transcend all of it, if not all of it physically, or cognitively, at least all of it spiritually. And so that we can really purify. Sadhana is that which purifies. It purifies all of those impressions that have been left upon us. The sanskaras, the vasanas, that have been left upon us by childhood that may not necessarily be so conducive to the life that we want to live. So the sadhana is what takes us exactly where we want to go. And the choices we make now, as I said, they are what determine our future. I always say this moment is the for everything that is predestined for you in the future. In this very moment, whatever you're doing is determining your future. And so we use this moment wisely. And if we don't know what to do in this moment, we meditate. We pray. We do seva, we chant, we sit at the feet of a guru, we ask, so that we know what seeds to plant, so that we can have the fruit that we want in our lives tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. A very holy and sacred Gita Jayanti. I urge everyone from wherever you may be from, whatever your religion may be, whatever your tradition may be, to just pick a line from the Bhagavad Gita today. Just pick a line, any line, open it up, and see how that teaching applies to your life. And if you need to substitute whatever word you use for God, if it says Krishna or if it says I, don't worry, go ahead and do that. All names are Krishna's names, it doesn't matter. And Krishna's names are all names of God, so just pick a line. And I promise you, if you introspect enough and you contemplate enough, you'll find that that line gives you a very deep teaching for your life. It's a beautiful spiritual practice. Pick a line every day or pick a line every week and just work with it. God knows how many commentaries of the Gita in every language. So not reading Sanskrit's not an excuse. In every language. So if you pick a line and you hold on to it for the week, you've got an opportunity to read so many different people's commentaries. Choose a Jnana Yoga commentary, a Bhakti Yoga commentary, and just see how different beings, different wise beings have spoken about the relevance of that line. Choose, an Indian enlightened master, choose a Western scholar of Indic traditions. See how many different commentaries you can get on that line, to see how many different ways you can find it meaningful and beneficial and applicable for your life. So have a beautiful, beautiful Gita Jayanti. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful night.